Just got a flash flood warning.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. The worst that happens, downtown Brownsville gets flooded. So if I need to leave, I'm SOL. Or if any of my friends need to come pick me up, it's like a nightmare, but I'm fine. But if I magically disappear, good morning.
It just flies off the screen.
Yeah. So folks are hopping on. Good morning, everybody. Yes, on a scale from 1 to 5, how excited are you for this panel?
What's the highest? 5?
Someone said 6. Someone said 10, 8. We can have our YouTube fantasy right now and pretend we're YouTubers. Political influencers.
Political influencers.
100s and hundreds. Good morning, everybody. We're just gonna have folks hop on. It's early. I hope everybody has their coffee. We are waiting to see if they will be joining us, if the council member will be joining us. So if they don't, we will just have to proceed without her. But we're trying to figure that out on the back end. So don't y'all worry. Make sure to smash that subscribe button. Make sure you follow Texas Rising on Twitter and Instagram. Make sure you're following us. Awesome. So we'll wait a couple of minutes. But just before we do start anything, Ivy, if you want to introduce yourself real quickly.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So hello, everyone. My name's Ivy Major McDowell. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the regional field coordinator for Austin, Central Texas. I live in Austin. I'm here just to help moderate, but mostly I will be in the background. I'm just here to make sure if any technical difficulties happen, I can jump in and help.
Yeah, so my name is Joe Colo-Nuvarez. I'm the field manager for the Rio Grande Valley. If you haven't been watching, the valley just got hit by a hurricane, so it's a little rainy and windy. So just in case my power goes out or I have an internet outage, Ivy will be taking over the panel for me, just to make sure we have everything under control. So thank you so much, Ivy. I guess we can go ahead and get started. We'll wait for the council member. If she shows up, we'll welcome her into the conversation. But for right now, I want to introduce our guests this morning. Welcome to the Running for Office panel. It's Jessica Power Hour this morning. If you didn't get your coffee, you're going to get your dose of energy and good vibes. And I'll let our panelists introduce themselves. Whatever Jessica wants to go first.
I'll go first. I'm State Representative Jessica Gonzalez. Currently represent District 104, serving my first term in the Texas House. I represent areas of Dallas, Grand Prairie, a little city that sits inside Cockrell Hill, and a little bit of Irving.
And hi, everybody. I'm Jessica as well. My name is Jessica Cisneros. I use she, her pronouns. I am from Laredo, Texas. This past March, we just came off of a very inspiring community effort, which was running our campaign for Congress to represent Texas' 28th Congressional District. So we came very, very close to toppling a 15-year incumbent. But I think one of our bigger wins was just bringing our community together and showing ourselves that we do deserve better and we can get better. We ran in a very progressive platform. We mostly relied on our sense of community as to, knowing your gut feeling as to what the community wants in terms of change. And obviously that resonated really well with voters. So we're pretty excited to, continue to work. One of our things we would always say that this was more than just one campaign. This was the beginning of, organizing, especially in my hometown that doesn't have a lot of organizational infrastructure. It's there. It's just a matter of keep working at it. So This past year was just incredibly inspiring and, just gave us fuel to keep on going.
Awesome. Thank you for those introductions. And just to contextualize the conversation this morning for everybody that's watching, this is really about talking to folks who have run for office or who are in office, to talk a little bit about their journey, how they got there. As we know, Texas Rising engages a lot of youth across the state of Texas, youth activists who are deeply involved in their college campuses and in their communities. So really kind of giving some words of wisdom on how to potentially level up our activism and potentially run for office if that's something that's in the cards for folks. I see we're getting a lot of love in the conversation here. So let's start off with, let's go to the beginning. So for whoever wants to answer this question first, what was the moment like when you decided to run for office? What was that point in your life where you're like, you know what, I need to do this because, this is what I need to do. Whoever wants to start first.
I can go first this time since we'll take turns. Well, so a little bit more context about, my race and how I got there. I'm an immigration attorney. That is what I do on my day to day. More than anything, it's removal defense work, which means I try to work with families to, make sure that their loved ones and themselves, like, they get to stay here. And I do this in front of an immigration judge. So it's a lot of litigation in court. I decided to pursue that line of work because I am the daughter of immigrants myself. And I saw how big of an impact policy and law had on my family because my parents actually were able to get their green cards through the 1986 Immigration Reform Act. And I was always very aware of that. And being from Laredo, Texas, where it's like 95% Latino, huge immigrant population, everybody has their own immigration story down here. I wanted to work to represent families like that, families that look like mine. During the past few years, everybody's aware just how difficult it has been in terms of, for immigrant families dealing with the current policies of the administration. Cruelty is a point, with a lot of these policies. And even before then, like, it's not just a Trump thing, right? The deportation machine has been alive and well for a very long time. But it got to the point that I was in the court, and it was so heartbreaking to have to console so many family members because their family was literally being torn apart in front of them. And to hear a lot of judges say, my hands are tied, like, I can't do anything, even if I want to help, and I do, I just can't. And knowing that, people in office really do have a lot of control over what happens in immigration policy. And not just that, but also, seeing the struggles of my hometown and like how there's many, like a story like mine, someone that went on to be an immigration attorney from my neighborhood called Sal Si Puedes. Like, you can imagine, like, my story is an exception and not the rule, even though there's so many talented folks, in our communities, that it's just because of happenstance that they aren't able to go after their dreams. And this was just one more iteration of that. So when I kept hearing, oh, the law's just not there, like, I can't, like, my hands are tied. Well, I was like, well, if the law isn't there, then I think at this point, my advocacy is going to shift, and let's go to Congress to make that law, right? Because it's happened before. So that was, I think, the moment that I was like, okay, I need to take my advocacy out of the courtroom and do something else. And I spoke about my decision with my family, my friends, other community members, to make sure that I was doing the right thing and that this was my role, in organizing, because running for office is just one role of many things you can do to keep the movement going. And all of this happened after one of my high school teachers nominated me to run for Congress. And if they were believing in me to do this, then I owed it to myself to believe in myself too, and do this and run and try to represent our community better.
That's amazing. That's so inspiring. Especially like for me, I'm from Brownsville, also border community. you don't see a lot of those stories, right? So it was just really powerful to see your story, right? State Rep Jessica Gonzalez, how about
Yeah.
yourself?
So mine is a little bit, it's like twofold on why I decided to become a lawyer and then when I decided to run for office. So my mom and I, one time we were, well, I was on my way to school and I got hit by a car that ran a red light. And my car was, rendered undrivable. And so I had my sister and my mom come to my rescue. And my mom doesn't speak English. She's, still a Mexican citizen. My parents immigrated here after they got married. And my mom didn't understand why the cops were speaking to me the way they were. They were treating me like I was a criminal and they wouldn't listen to me and they were yelling at me. And so my mom was like, well, why are they treating me this way? You didn't do anything wrong. And so the cops were threatening to arrest my mom if she didn't stop speaking English, and threatened to arrest me if I didn't stop her. And so, and I felt really helpless. I couldn't do anything because I didn't want to get arrested. I didn't want my mom to get arrested. And so at that point, I decided that I wanted to be a voice for people who didn't have a voice. And so in my head, I was like, well, people listen to lawyers. And so I really wanted to get a law degree to use my degree and use my, my education as a way to be able to, right, be a voice that was heard, that is going to be heard. And so that kind of got me a little bit more involved in the community and more involved in doing, activism in the community. And I got really involved in law school and doing a lot of community work. And, kind of fast forward a little bit, the area that I represent, I grew up here. I went to elementary school here. This is the district when my parents came here from Mexico. They came to that little town that I mentioned that I represent. It's called Cockrell Hill. And, so my roots are here. And the area over here is changing a lot. It's gentrifying. I saw a bunch of small businesses being pushed out. And my parents are small business owners. I mean, they started a Mexican snack business when I was 5. So I grew up in that. I grew up in this community. I grew up going to these little mom and pop places, these little restaurants, and people started getting also kicked out of their homes. I mean, they couldn't afford to live here anymore, and people that loved to live in this community could no longer live here. So I mean, I was seeing that. I was seeing all the rhetoric from the Trump administration, attacks on the immigrant communities. And I'm a personal injury lawyer, so the majority of my clients are Mexicanos, and a lot of them are undocumented too. And so it was really sad to see how they were really scared to go to the grocery store. They were scared to pick up their kids from school. And for me, it was like, where is the leader here in this district? And why isn't he, who it was my predecessor, why isn't he having events and informing, the community on what's going on? It's just there's no voice. And so my predecessor had been there for, I believe, almost 29 years. And, it's a very safe Democrat seat, very progressive. It's changed a lot. It's gotten younger. And it deserves to have, someone that is going to, talk about the issues that are important here in the district. And he just wasn't. And so it was a very scary decision to make because you just don't run in, in your own party, right? It's like wait your turn, but if you wait your turn, you're never going to do it. And so, I started getting people in the community that, because I was thinking about running for city council initially, and I was like, well, if I do it, we just do city council. The person who was here was about to term out, and so that kind of put the bug back in my head again. And I figured that with my background that I would be able to be more effective at the state level. And so I was getting a lot of support from the community to do that. And it is a really hard decision. Sorry, because it does take a lot of time and it's hard to raise money, especially when you're running in the Democratic primary against somebody who's been there for 26, 29 years. You do, and as Jessica, probably knows as well, you do get a lot of people saying some nasty things. So you have to have tough skin. But I'm glad that I did it. And, it was evident that the community wanted somebody who was going to stand up and fight for their issues. They wanted to see, they just wanted to have some hope that, somebody was actually going to go out there and fight for them, even though it may not happen the first time. That's progress. So that's kind of my story.
No, awesome. I think what's interesting is that what I'm hearing from both of you is there's a journey of advocacy in different issues to represent communities that often are extremely marginalized, right, by different systems. And so using that kind of experience to build yourself into a pathway that allows you to run for office and be in office. But I think I want to go back to something that I think you just said, State Rep, about challenging Democratic incumbents, which I think is something both of you have experience in. We saw it happen with Jessica, and you just spoke about your journey. So if y'all would like to please, let's talk about that a little bit more, because I think that's important. Someone said, you said, I think actually about this notion of like waiting your turn. What was that like for you, challenging a long-term Democratic incumbent, and how can that continue to feed and inspire future candidates, right, who are potentially in a similar situation, who feel like they're told to wait their turn, right? Like, how do we push back against that? And I'll just open up the floor to whoever wants to answer that.
I mean, it's scary. I mein, it's a scary decision to make. My predecessor, it's not personal. It was nothing personal at all. We were actually both co-founders of, the Mexican American Bar Association of Dallas, right? And he was my office neighbor. So I had to pass his law firm to get to my law firm. And so it just makes it, an awkward thing. And we're both, active in the, Dallas County Democratic Party. And, so it was a very hard decision to make, because you start getting people that, oh, why are you attacking your own? And it's not personal. And that's what nobody's entitled to have, to have their elected position. It's the people's seat, and let the people decide who they want there in their seat. And so, you have to go into it knowing that you're not going to get, the money sometimes, that you're going to get the people that are going to support, the old guard, that are going, that aren't going to endorse you. And so you just have to be, okay with, getting told no, and just pick yourself back up and just, keep going, and just, keep your eye on the prize. But, it is definitely, you have the folks that, want to protect the incumbents, the old guard. And then you have, but for me, a lot of the younger people did come out for me, and they want to see somebody younger that's progressive, that's running, and, just kind of challenge that. And so, I went into it that, hey, if I don't do it this first time around, I'm going to do it again. And, and I'll get it done the second time. Fortunately, I didn't have to, I won the first time around, but, it is definitely, a hard decision to make, because you do get a lot of that, rhetoric. But, at the end of the day, it's, if you wait your turn, when is that going to be? So people will stay in office for, as we've seen, 30 years.
Yeah. And I just want to go real quickly. Carissa just updated us. We did get a call from Natasha Harper Madison, the council member. She is dealing with the crisis in Austin and what happened last night at the Black Lives Matter protest. So we're sending all our love to our Austin family. And so she will not be able to join us this morning. So just for folks who didn't catch that in the comments. And if you have questions, if folks have more questions, please drop them in the comments. We'll come to those questions at the end of the conversation here, near the end of the conversation. But Jessica Cisneros, if you want to...
Yeah, the first thing we need to recognize is that primaries are a function of our democracy. Like, they're there for a reason, right? Unfortunately, because of a lot of forces that Jessica just talked about, they aren't used as often. I think that once you start feeling entitled to your seat, that starts clouding, your decision making for the community. Like, are you actually taking a risk and representing the community if you feel like, I can't do that because of my seat, or I can't do that because of this, right? So I think we need to acknowledge that. Also, the notion that you have to wait your turn, like, that's just another way of the system keeping people like us, like, from running for those seats, right? There's this notion that there's all these hoops and hurdles that you got to get through before you can actually, run for office. Usually, and they tend to be, first, you need to become an attorney, which isn't true. It's just coincidental, I think, that both of us are, but like, you really don't. You don't. I truly believe many legislative bodies could probably do best without more attorneys, but there's this also hurdle that, like, you have to, be well off because campaigns take a lot of money, and like you have to have this certain social circle around you because those are the movers and shakers, and they're the ones that funnel all this money into your campaigns, and all these things that like people, working class folks, children of immigrants, everyday people, they just don't have those requirements, right? But it's done that way to discourage those people from running. So this notion of like having to wait your turn obviously hurts like us from having true representation, and representation that actually is reflective of the communities that these legislative bodies purport to represent, right? Running against an incumbent, Henry Guaya has been in office, well, in this specific office since I was like 13 years old. And even before that, he was a state rep as well. So like it's been 30 years of us, living here in this community. But the thing that I think, the reason why the establishment was just so shocked that we came this close was because, again, we were trusting our ear to the ground as locals, and the people that we were surrounding ourselves, like my neighbors, like my mom, has friends, her comadres, like my people at my church, like those are everyday people that weren't satisfied with the representation we were receiving. And because of that, they weren't voting because they felt like, I mean, why do I keep voting if it's like the same thing over and over again? So with this campaign, we inspired those folks again to believe in like, we actually can have better representation. And they came out and voted in droves, like they really did. And the reason why I think that the establishment was just so shocked that we came this close is because the people that they were surrounding themselves with, and I'll, mention Henry Cuellar like specifically because that's who we're talking about in this context. The people he was surrounding himself with weren't the same people I was surrounding myself with, right? Of course, the people around him were satisfied with the representation they were having because they have it, like it's everything is going well for them. But what about the people next to me in my Saucipuedes neighborhood, right? That don't have healthcare, that don't have good paying jobs, that, are struggling to get by. Like all those people also deserve representation. And that's why they decided to get engaged this cycle, around. So again, I think it comes down to, again, just remembering why you're running, making sure that those reasons are good reasons for the community, not just for your own self-gain. And what the message is, like what are you offering people that they just don't have under this current representation? And if all of those things point to you running and that you're doing a good job, and people are going to respond to that and they're going to come out and vote for you, and the money is going to come from that too, because you don't need to donate $500 to like donate to a campaign, right? Like we were able to raise $2 million with an average contribution of like less than $30. And that's what I'm really proud of, because it's like, again, this is powered by everyday people.
I think that's super important too, right? The messaging and making sure that, I mean, these incumbents, it almost feels like they put themselves in like an echo chamber of only the people that continue to support, because it obviously benefits them. But we know that outside of that echo chamber, there's a whole other community that's being left out of the conversation. And the way things are going and continuing to progress in our communities, like people really need representation and really need people in positions of power to advocate for them. And I think that's super important. And I think that comes to this level also of which I think is something I would kind of want to talk about real quickly, is this notion of also, especially as like people of color, right? and yourselves as women, like being in a position where potentially you may be underestimated, and like having people question your experience, having people talk down to you, which I'm sure is something that potentially y'all may have faced. And I think this is something also because of young people who want to potentially have a future running for office. Like, how do you fight that, and how do you overcome those moments when people do underestimate you?
I mean, I think for me, I mean, yeah, I got, there was some of that was going on, like, oh, that's cute that, she wants to run for office. Oh, that's cute that she wants to run against, someone who's been there for 26 years and, on some of these powerful committees. And that is what my predecessor, that was one thing that he did mention, right, was seniority and down to even just picking your parking spaces, right? Which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it, but and just him having experience. But we all have to start somewhere. When he first got elected, he went in the same way that I went in. That's experience that you gain. But I don't think that even running as a open LGBTQ candidate, I didn't get any of that. I didn't get any negativity from my constituents. I ran on issues, and I think that's what people wanted to hear. They wanted to hear that somebody's actually concerned about these issues that are affecting people in the district, and that's the message that I had. That I was knocking on doors and hey, what issues do you want your legislator to work on when they're in Austin? And some of them were just like, wow, is this really you on this push card? And I was like, yeah. Well, they're like, well, don't you have people that you pay to do this? And I said, well, I'm asking for your vote, so I need to be the one out here knocking on doors. And so, and a lot of them were just like, they're like, wow, nobody's ever knocked on my door before. And I think that kind of a little bit what Jessica mentioned earlier is people. They started coming out in droves, right? Because it was like, wow, now I have a choice. Now I have an option. And it motivated them to go vote. It motivated younger people to come out and vote because now they had a choice. They had a choice on who gets to go to Austin and represent them. But I mean, as far as like, I really didn't get a lot of it except for, yes, like that, oh, that's cute. She's going to win. But instead of focusing on some of those negative things that could potentially become part of the message, I stayed focused on this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I'm not going to even pay attention to anything else that's being said in the background. And that just kept me focused on my race. And, I ended up winning with over 65% of the vote. And so I didn't really get a lot of that. But when, just got to ignore it, got to have tough skin and just, keep your eye on the prize and, just keep, talking to the community. And for me, I won just through grassroots efforts. My predecessor I don't even know how much he spent, but I spent way less than that. And, and I was able to be successful.
Something that I really want to highlight in what Jessica just said is that there were a lot of people that were like shocked that the person that was running for office was there on their doorstep. Like that happened a ton in our district. So our district runs from like around San Antonio on the east side, down to Laredo, down to the Rio Grande Valley in Mission, right? So it's huge. It's a lot of ground to cover. I know that like physically I wasn't going to be able to go knock on every door, right? So like different strategies are needed. But that didn't stop me from like going out there and trying to meet as many voters as possible in person. And they were so shocked that somebody that was running was out there doing that and doing that outreach and asking them personally for that. And I would always tell them, like, first off, like, if they didn't know who their congressperson was and the guy's been in office for 15 years, there's a problem, right? The second thing was that they were like, well, I don't know, like, like they were unsure of the representation they were receiving. And at that point, I would be like, well, if Henrik Ware comes personally and knocks on your door and asks you for your vote, give it to him. But in the meantime, I'm the one that's out here. I'm the one that's putting the effort and I commit myself to doing that, while representing you. And that obviously had a big impact on like a lot of people that I was talking to that weren't unsure, because it's true, right? Like that is the kind of representation that we want. And they saw that I was out there making the effort to do it. As a young person, I'm 27 now, but when I was running, I was 26. I think it was more my opponent trying to say like, that I was very young and inexperienced, but when you're out there not like knocking on doors and talking to people directly, they don't care about your age. They just care about like, are you actually going to do your best to represent me, right? And what are you going to do to try to help me put food on the table? What are you going to do to try to help me make ends meet? So it was those questions more than anything. And I think one of the things that you really have to emphasize, and I think somebody mentioned it in the comments, was like, what has that experience brought us? What has my opponent's experience brought us? If he's out there bragging about how he's on the appropriations committee, like, oh, that's great. for the past 30 years, there's still a 30% poverty rate in our hometown. For the past, so many years, there's still a quarter of the people living in our district that are uninsured. Like there's like all these issues that haven't been solved by the fact that your experience is on the appropriations committee. So, we can do better. Like, let's do it, right? He refused to meet me on the debate stage, and I think it was because he knew that he didn't have much to stand on. And I think, again, as a young person, like you just have to remind yourself that all your experiences and your opinions are valid, like they're lived experiences, and that the best experience you can actually offer the people in the district that you're seeking to represent is, the lived experience of being from there and knowing what the issues are and knowing, from your own perspective, what you think the best solution is and fighting for it.
Thank you for that. So I wanted to also kind of, because this maybe touches on a question that was asked in the chat about when your first steps into running for office. But I would like to know, what is something that you wish you knew now when you started out running for office that potentially could have helped you make things a little bit easier, or something that you could offer as an advice for people who are starting to consider running for office?
You want to take that one first?
Yeah. How shameless are you willing to be? I think that is something that you have to assess, like not just as a candidate either, but like even as like whatever kind of organizing work you're doing, like how shameless are you really willing to get? And I mean that, like, and Jessica brought this up earlier, it's hard to raise money. I think from a cultural perspective as well, like it's hard because we don't talk about money. Like we just don't, like we're just taught not to, right? We're, at least my parents, like, try, like, don't borrow money. Like we, figure out a way to do this. Like, you're going to do it on your own. But I think here you also have to remind yourself, like, one, the stuff that I'm asking for isn't for myself. It is for our community, right? And I'm willing to do whatever I need to do for my community and make sure to see that it's okay. I think that's probably like one of the things that you have to assess. If anybody had told me how much time I was going to spend on the phone, like being super uncomfortable and asking people for money, like I probably wouldn't have done this, to be honest. But once you're in there, you're like, no, like I need to do this, even though I'm not happy doing it, right? But it's because you can have the best message in the world, but if there's no way that you can actually, like, you can get that message to people's ears or on their doorstep through, like, your push card or, even having whatever resources that you need to be able to get your message out there, then you're not going to be very successful, right? So there's a lot of things. I think for me, that was probably the thing that I struggled with the most. And that's why I bring it up. There's other people that really feel like fundraising is their thing, and they probably have some other area, with as a candidate that they struggle with. But yeah, I think for me, I always give that advice, like how shameless are you willing to get? And, just go for there. If the answer is like, I'm going to be super shameless, then you should definitely consider running.
Yeah, I think I would agree that I mean, call time that's like nails on a chalkboard to me. I it's so hard for me to sit down and just, make phone calls to ask for money. So yeah, that's probably that I still struggle with that. And I'm elected now, because it is difficult. I think part of it is just cultural, it's a cultural thing. And then, it's especially for women too, it's even harder for women to raise money. But you can never underestimate, right, those small amounts, and just in the past, just from like people that I met in law school or when I, did an internships in DC, those networks that, really, I mean, they all come through for you, and all those small donations. I mean, that was the majority of, at least a big chunk of the money that I raised. But I mean, I'm trying to think of if what I would change. I mean, I won my election, so there's not a lot that I think that I would change. I mean, I had a very, very small campaign team. I mean, really for the longest time, it was just me and my campaign consultant, and I was the one that was out there knocking on doors. And then one of my friends that I knew from CHCI, I was a Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute law fellow in 2011, had moved to Dallas, and he's like, "Hey, I heard you're running," and he didn't live too far from me. And so he started walking on, and at first, even knocking on doors for me was really hard. Like he had to walk with me and walk. And for me, it was like, I knocked on the door, nobody answered. Like that was like a good day, right? And so now it's like, and I love knocking on doors. I'd rather knock on doors than make phone calls any day. And that was something that I really love to do. And so, and obviously that helped me, right? That helped me succeed in my campaign was, knocking on doors. But I think that given the fact that it is hard to raise money, one thing that I would say is, because of that, you just got to be really careful with the money that you do spend. And so for me, it was like, these are people that are choosing to give me $5, $10 instead of using that money to buy some groceries or to put gas in their car. So they're investing in me. And so I have to spend my money, carefully. And so, people will tell you that they are, a field organizer if they've knocked on doors once. So you just got to be careful with, especially when you're hiring people for your campaign, because people will tell you that, to pay them this much amount of money a month, but you just want to make sure that you're actually getting what you're paying for, because that money, it is hard to raise, and people are investing in you. So you just want to make sure that you're hiring people that do have the experience that they say that they have, and that are going to be effective in your campaign.
And if I can add one thing to what you just brought up and how important that is like surrounding yourself by good campaign staff is like so crucial to your success as a campaign. And I say that, and when I mean good, like I don't mean like just good at what they do, but like that they're good people and that they really do have the good of your community in mind. Because having a campaign, I was so lucky to have, I was so blessed with my team, like all of them, they're amazing. And I congratulate myself for doing a good job and picking great people, because being a candidate is so stressful. Like there are so many things that you need to be on top of, that you also don't have the capacity, emotional, mental, physical capacity to be dealing with like staff issues, right? So like that's another thing that I think people don't mention a lot, is like make sure you're surrounding yourself with good people, and that there's not going to be any drama, that everybody knows exactly what they're going in there to do, and that the ego gets checked at the door. And that's like for me, like as well, like I'm not going to put my ego before anything. Like, is this for the best, like for the campaign and for the people we're trying to represent?
And speaking of people on our teams, Texas Rising works with, again, young people across the state of Texas. Why is it important to engage young people in campaigns, and how can young people get involved? And I know we have 8 minutes left, so whoever wants to tackle those real quick.
I mean, well, I think I had mentioned earlier that, with my district, it's changed a lot, right? It's gotten younger, but it was the young people that came out to support me, because you did have the old guard people, and then you had the younger people that were excited that I was challenging a long-term incumbent. And I think just, the way to stay engaged is to, reach out to these campaigns, reach out to people who are running for office. I mean, they're not going to turn away a volunteer. And that's a really good way also, if you're thinking about running for office, to kind of see how campaigns work, and just kind of get some experience there. But I mean, it's very important. I mean, our community is getting younger and younger, and hearing the issues that affect younger people, that really gives them a seat at the table. And it helps us too, especially like as legislators, to take those issues into account when we're faced with, legislation or, whatever the issue is.
Obviously it is important, because I think if young people come out to vote in, high numbers, like it's a very decisive part of an election, right? For my team, the average age, and I had, at some point we had like about 12, 13 people working on the campaign full time. Our average age was like 27. And we're a very, very young campaign, for the most part women, except for like 2 staff members and, women of color predominantly. And I think, one of the ways to get young people involved is if they see themselves in the campaign, right? And I think that's just how we were able to like really energize young voters. The other thing is making asks as a campaign. There were a lot of people that like came out to volunteer and have a very active role within the campaign because we asked them to. Because sometimes folks have it in their head that it's like, oh, I probably wouldn't, provide anything useful. Like I'd be more of a hindrance than like actually helping them. But it's like, no, like we need as many people as possible, and like everybody has something to offer. And I think that's why it's really important to have campaigns be reflective of the diversity in the community, and that includes young people as well.
I'm going to add too that I'm going to add real quick that running for office. I mean, just when people see other people that look like them that are running, I mean, that gets them excited to help out. They you want to see something different instead of the typical person who's been there forever. So that too, I think that really engages younger people to get involved is in seeing other younger people doing it themselves.
Yeah, I think that really matters, right? Seeing people like us in office is super important, and that helps change the conversation, changes the way we look at candidates and politicians and people in office, and it really helps younger people want to be more involved and engage more. I see our timer's on for 4 minutes left, but in a couple of words, just final thoughts. What makes you excited for the future? For people in office, what makes you excited for the future of the state, for our country? Anything you all would like to share?
I mean, I'm excited about hopefully electing Biden as our new president because the current administration has just been horrible. I'm excited about. I think that Texas is gonna. I think we're gonna potentially flip the Texas House and be in control for the first time in forever. I'm planning on filing a comprehensive non-discrimination piece of legislation next session. So that's going to be my top priority. And I've already gotten bipartisan support on it, which is the first time this has ever happened. So I've been working a lot on that. So I've been kind of using this period that we're kind of on downtime to focus on that as well and just engaging with the community. Yeah.
I think for me, I'm both excited, and I think this is the thing that is giving me hope right now, is that even though things are obviously not where we want them to be, I think a lot of the issues we've been talking about and like the consequences we've been talking about or yelling into the void, it feels like are happening right now and like on steroids. And I think about the Valley a lot, right? Because I really do believe that like that area always gets the short end of the stick. What we're seeing right now with COVID and the hurricane, like policy had a lot to do with that, right? Whether it be us not not responding to the climate crisis the way that we should be, not investing in our infrastructure, in our people's health down there, not giving them good jobs. This is the result, right? This is what's going to happen. It's people like us suffering. I think, but the thing that's giving me hope is seeing young people rising up to the occasion and not letting, what we mentioned earlier, like, oh, that's so cute, or you don't have the experience, or you shouldn't be in these spaces. These aren't for you. Like, no, we're challenging that and we're getting up and we're organizing. And I think it's just been, progressive ideals have become mainstream. And I think that's awesome because it happened over a few short years, right? And I can only imagine what's going to happen in the next few years when we're picking up, victories. And they might seem small. There might not be the end all be all that we want, but they're small victories and they're starting to snowball. And as a result of like the efforts that everyone is putting in right now, like, we're going to see the fruition in a few, hopefully, years. So that to me is very exciting.
Exciting. Yeah, there's a lot of things to look forward to. I want to thank both of you for being with us this morning. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. To everybody that was watching, thank you for hopping on today, this morning, Sunday morning. Ivy, if you want to hop on, if you want to do the group fee, I think I can do that. Are we okay to take a group fee? Oh, here we go.
Can I do it? Well, hold on.
Oh, let me retake mine.
Oh, wait, retake.
Yeah, you have an option to retake it, and then if you scroll a little bit, you'll say use this one.
Okay, well, let's go with that one. Okay.
I was just one and done.
I know. I was like,
Gotta find your angles.
uh-huh.
I probably could have done a better job, but it's fine.
It's Sunday morning. I think that,
Yeah.
Right. 2 seconds left. Thank y'all so much. We're waiting for folks.
Thank you for having me.
Bye. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Please stay safe, everyone.
Well, you stay safe.
I'm surprised my power didn't go out. So we're still good. I think folks are still taking the group fee.
But yeah, feel free to hop off. I know time is precious. It will automatically actually send to your email, so you'll get a copy of this. So far, we have 25 people who finished their selfie, so maybe that's good enough.
Yeah, I think
Awesome.
I think that's good.
Okay. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. And sadly, we couldn't get to all the questions, but yeah, I think it was really great. I learned so much.
Yeah,
That's great. Thank y'all so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll see you on the next panels. I'm going to be popping in and out today.
Yes.
Bye.
Goodbye. How do I leave this?
I will close it all. I'm just waiting for the
photo.
group to, yes, to process. But yeah, that went so quickly. They had such full answers. We sadly couldn't get to any of the audience questions.
Well, I was trying to tie in some of the audience questions to the conversation a little bit, but
it's so cute. Okay, I'm going to send it to you and to Josh.
Okay, perfect. So it's still rendering on my end. I'll see y'all later.
Yes, bye.
Bye.